Sometimes in the filmmaking journey, the only thing that's going to stand between yourself and being successful comes down to your business skills. Doesn't matter how talented you are, doesn't matter how great your movies are, if you don't have the necessary business skills for negotiating deals, for getting brand deals, sponsorship deals, distribution deals, studio deals, or just working with other professionals in general, having the right business attitude and having the right skill sets can really make a big difference. So today I'm covering the top 10 most needed skill assets that every filmmaker needs to have. Coming right up.
I'm on a journey to create the greatest movie experience in the world. While I'm carving out my filmmaking entrepreneurial path, I want to help you create yours. Let's make some movies.
Hello everyone, James Martin here. I'm here to help you filmmakers to not only make better movies, but also to help you succeed in your career. So today I want to talk about the business side of filmmaking, which may not seem like a lot of fun, but I promise you this is so important because this really will make or break the difference between you succeeding and you not. Because it's these business skills that are going to help you work with different businesses, different companies, different studios, negotiate deals, or work with other professionals and other filmmakers in the business. So it's very important that you really have these skills down pat. And if this video helps you out, please smash the like button, but also comment below if you have any other questions, and maybe I'll do a follow-up series where I'll do, another 10 more skills assets, because there's so many things that you could be doing, but really, these are the top 10 that I see missed so often, and I really want to make sure I address them. So, we're starting with number 1. Always follow up and be responsive. So one of the important things we're going to understand is that, it doesn't matter if you have a great conversation and a great sort of camaraderie with another person. Sometimes as a human being, we tend to forget things. And especially when it comes to emails and whatever, especially in the film industry, when you're going to get emailed locations, times, dates when you need to show up, right? Your call sheets. If you're an actor or an actress, you're going to get your sides, your audition sides, your script, different papers, different contact information, different things that you need. It's very important that you get into the habit of following up and being responsive. So as soon as you get an email, my rule of thumb is always respond to a phone call, text, message, email, doesn't matter what it is. Always try and respond within 24 hours of receiving it. Or if you're following up, respond within 24 hours after that initial conversation to the best of your ability. So if you had a conversation around lunchtime, then you should really respond either later that afternoon, evening, or the following morning. That way it's fresh in your mind, it's fresh in the other person's mind, and then following up by email just helps to clarify in written form what you had discussed. It helps clarify information so you're not second guessing as to like, oh, you said this, and then they said, oh, you said this. And also please respond. How many times have I sent out emails or messages or texts or phone calls and you don't get a response? And I mean, again, I get it that life gets in the way. I've certainly had my fair share where I haven't responded to anything, but for a majority of the time, you do want to do your best to respond as soon as possible. The second thing that will help you be more professional is take responsibility of a situation, even if it's not your fault. If there's a problem, someone needs to take the reins. Someone has to take control of the problem, whether it's your department or someone else's department, or even if it's not even your fault. Taking charge, taking command of either dealing with a problem at hand or assigning someone to deal with a problem. One time I had scheduled a driver to pick up one of my actors at a subway station and then drive him over to set. But all of a sudden I find out from the actor that the driver actually never showed up. Now, that's not our fault that's not our fault or my fault because I was directly dealing with the guy because we had a contract. I emailed him literally the day before with very specific instructions as to when, where, who you're picking up, who you're driving this person to, and just all of a sudden, this guy never showed up. And even if we tried calling him and texting him and getting him to respond, he never called back. He completely disappeared and let us down. But I didn't complain. I didn't say, well, it's not our fault, blah, blah, blah. Instead, I assigned someone to go immediately pick him up and bring the actor back over. Or one point on set, I remember my production designer, she really needed some cardboard boxes. Well, it's not really my responsibility to help deal with production design, but I wanted to at least help her out. She had an assistant. Both of them were swamped. So instead, I hopped in my car. I wasn't needed. I ran around the corner to a nearby grocery store, got some cardboard boxes, came back, and I did that just to help them out. So taking control and at least doing whatever you can to help, relieve a situation or solve a challenge really does help. And it shows your maturity and your professionalism. This next one, and this really is huge, this is a big one I had to learn, which is always have something in writing. This is big on agreements, contracts. If someone asks you to do something, make sure that they follow up or you follow up, and make sure you have everything in a written form, because what that is documentation. You can go back, you can check that documentation, because it's a lot easier, and you're less likely to actually record a conversation. But what you can do is, if you don't record a conversation, is you can go back and write out sort of what we're agreeing to do. Email is always recommended, because even if you can't remember all the details, you can at least respond and say, okay, I believe we talked about A, B, and C. Please let me know that's correct. They might correct and say, actually, we talked about A, B, and X, Y, and Z instead. Okay, fine. So at least you have that in an email that you can always go back and check. And especially when it comes down to, you and someone else maybe not seeing eye to eye and having a bit of an argument, and you're like, well, I said this, no, you said this type situation, you can always go back to the email and it'll have it right there, and you'll know if we agree or not. So always have something in writing. Don't just do a verbal conversation, because there's no documentation. You can't prove what anyone said. This next one is also very important, which is always show up early. One of the big, important rules, concrete rules that I learned when I was at film school is, if you show up early, you're on time. If you show up on time, you're late. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say your call time, or the time that you have to arrive on set, is like 6 in the morning, right? Well, instead of showing up at 6, you should be there at least 15 minutes before you arrive. You should always plan on arriving on set at least 15 to 30 minutes beforehand. If you're coming from a very long distance, I would even try and be there anywhere from half an hour to an hour, especially if it's like a really big set and it's very important and you really want to make a good impression. The earlier, the better, but at the very minimal, 50 minutes before a set, and that way you're there, you can show up, you can take your smoke break or a bathroom break, do whatever you need to do, rest, take a coffee, and then by the time it's ready to be on set, you're good to go. Because if you show up on time, then you have to take a moment to go to the bathroom or do whatever you need, and that becomes wasted time. And it's more professional when you always show up early. Next one, speak clearly, calmly, and appropriately. So what does that mean? Well, one of my big philosophies as the single most important skill that you really have to develop in order to be professional and to have things run smoothly on set is communication. If you're talking really fast and you're rushing, you don't speak clearly, you're mumbling, or if you just use a lot of inappropriate language, a lot of swearing, or you're taking things very personal, then the communication doesn't go very well. So get in the habit of, instead of shouting, speak calmly. If the person can't hear you, go up to them and just calmly talk to them, right? Talk to them slowly. If it's something that, if you're talking to them long distance, if you need to get the information very clearly to them, get in the habit of speaking slowly and clearly. But also, if you talk appropriately, so don't start swearing right off the bat. Even if you're upset, do your best to try and remain calm and deal the situation head on, because if you get stressed out, then it continues. It's sort of like when you throw a pebble into the lake and the ripples continue. That's the same with you. If you panic and if you freak out and stress out and start treating everyone rudely, then the ripple continues. At some point, someone has to stop, speak clearly, and start having good communication. The next thing, this is my personal advice, always look for ways to help. One of the best advice I ever learned from film school was from one of my teachers, and he always said, there's always something you can do. And I firmly believe that it doesn't matter what position you are in, doesn't matter what the situation is, there is always something that you can do to help, even if it's not your own department. I remember on the latest set that I was on, I was on as the producer. My initial role is just to keep an eye on things and make sure that everything runs smoothly, and if there's any sort of initial problems, like bigger things like casting problems, crew problems, whatever, that I'm there and I can deal with those problems. But when I was essentially sitting there and just watching everything, I also got myself involved, and I did things like I served coffee. mainly because there was like 3 or 4 people who wanted coffee, and I was more than fine to sit by the coffee machine and make coffee for everyone. Wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal, you know. Or I made sure that the meals were ready, so I took responsibility for the food. When it came to dealing with the locations, I took care of that as well, right? When I was just checking around, make sure everyone's okay. Do you have water? Is there anything I can do for you? I always did that, and just little things like that really do help. And it shows that you're a very generous and very passionate person, and you're there to help. And it just makes a really good impression, as opposed to just sitting around and just being stubborn and arrogant and just like, well, not my department. I don't care. I'm not going to deal with it. And if someone says no, then that's a different story. And I wouldn't go running around and just start randomly touching other people's equipment. You don't want to do that either. But at least just by going up to someone and saying, hey, listen, is there anything I can do to help? Makes a big difference, especially if you're volunteering and you're PAing on someone else's set. Next one, please be 100% organized in your scheduling, in your budgeting, in your thoughts, in meetings, ideas. Do whatever you can to stay on top of the work, take whatever notes you can, do whatever documentation you need. You know, always follow up with someone, call them, text them, email them if you're not sure what's going on. Always just make sure you're on top of everything. What you really don't want to do is just be lost. And, you know, one of the biggest factors that I find really differentiates someone that you really want to bring on set versus someone who's lazy and you really want to avoid at all costs is someone who doesn't put an effort to stay on top of their line of work. I've brought on some crew members that don't respond to emails, or they just expect to be spoon-fed all the information. Well, you know, sometimes, you know, the producers get really busy, or the ADs get really, really busy. And so if you don't hear anything, just check up. Like, hey, listen, I haven't received the call sheet. Do you know when the call sheet might be sent out? Or listen, I'm not sure about X, Y, and Z. Can I please get some clarification? Again, communication is everything, but being organized is huge. Next thing, again, my own personal advice is always show appreciation. If you always come from a place of appreciation, it just handles problems, especially when it gets stressful and intense. It deals with those problems on a much more positive note. So for instance, let's say something happened and someone's like, listen, you know, you were supposed to do this and this was supposed to happen, and if you had done this, you know, in those case scenarios, you can at least try and do something. Well, listen, if someone complains to you, maybe the first thing out of your mouth should be, well, listen, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. It just, again, it brings you back to a positive place. It shows that you care about what other people do and their opinions, and then it just takes things to a much better note. Because then they can't turn around and saying, oh, you're a bad person, you're really mean. Well, if you're thanking them and if you're showing, you know, gratitude towards happening, then you're always going to be on a much more positive note, right? Maybe someone got something to you late, right? And instead of just getting, you know, really, really upset about it, just say, well, listen, I really appreciate that you took the time to do that. Maybe next time, could you try and do it when I need you to do it, or try and do it even sooner, right? Stuff like that. And again, very calmly, very respectfully, always, always, always helps. And just always showing the gratitude just really puts you on a much more positive note. All right, next, be clear of expectations. So this comes down to communication as well. I talk about this all the time. So be clear of expectations, especially with, you know, when you're dealing with crew and cast. Make sure they understand the roles that they play, the expectations you have for them on set. You know, I expect you to be professional. I expect you to be very nice to everyone. If you're not, that's going to lead to a problem, right? If someone's going to come on, and be your editor, make sure you're very clear with them as to how long are they going to be on the project, because they're not going to stay on forever. Hopefully not. At least say to them, like, okay, so your time period is this time to this time. Let them know how much money they're going to get paid, or if it's volunteer, what are they going to get in return, and make sure they understand that, like, listen, I just want to make sure that this is beneficial for you as well, right? Let's say it's someone that they just came on really, really quickly and you just wanted to get the ball rolling. That's fine. Eventually get back to them and say, okay, listen, I know we started off in a bit of a rush, but I want to make sure that we're clear on expectations. You know, here are our timelines. Here's what we're looking to do. Here's what to expect. You know, ideally, I would like us to accomplish this as the next step. What can we do from here? I have always found that when you have very clear goals and outlines as to like what you're looking for, as well as showing appreciation like the previous step, communication always runs much more smoothly. And the last but not least, I find this issue specifically when you're getting feedback and criticism about anything. Please don't take anything personal. And this comes down to a couple things. So one, it comes down to, criticism and feedback often, because you're going to get criticism from wherever. If you're the editor, guess what? The director and the producer are going to criticize the work. You can't take it personal because it's not that they're attacking you. They're not necessarily attacking you as a human being. They're just trying to morph and change the edit and change the story to better fit, make a better movie, right? If you shot something, don't take it personal if someone doesn't like it. That's not saying that they don't like you. They're not saying that you're crappy at your job. It just means they don't like that shot. Simple as that. But the other thing about taking things personal is, unfortunately, as much as I want to say that film sets can be a lot of fun, a lot of times they can be extremely stressful. There's a lot of stress and anxiety on set. There's, a lot of money being spent, very small bits of time, lots of people running around, and sometimes clear on expectations, sometimes they're not. And, sometimes someone's going to yell, someone's going to snap. Unfortunately, it does happen. I've done it multiple times myself, unfortunately, and I'm the one that talks about speaking clearly. Well, sometimes the stress does get to you, right? So never ever take something personal, ever. Because most of the time, it's not that they're criticizing you as a person, they're just upset at the situation. Or maybe they're upset at someone else, but they just took it out on you. So please don't ever take something personal. Just deal with it head on. Again, clear expectations. If there's something that you need to fix, just go ahead, fix it. Or better yet, if it's not your fault, take control of the situation anyways, even if it's not your fault. And just that way, we can start transitioning and start moving forward to a solution as opposed to continuing the problem. All right, that's it. I hope this helped you out. And if it did, please smash that like button. Share this to other friends and filmmakers so that they benefit as well. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because I got weekly content coming out all the time. Please make sure you stick around and check out more videos. And meanwhile, good luck with your videos, good luck with your films, and I will see you next time.